In Perspectives on Thelema, respondents record their answers to a couple of questions that they pick from a list. If you are a member of OTO and would like to participate in this new segment, please write to us at thelemapodcast@gmail.com. Today we'll feature the responses to two questions by Frater IAO131 of Blazing Star Oasis in the San Francisco Bay Area. Thanks for participating, Frater IAO131. So the first question is, what do you think our biggest obstacle is in the pursuit of promulgating the Law of Thelema?
Currently, the biggest hindrance to promulgating the Law of Thelema is the belief that Thelema is a form of occultism and is only really for occultists. The Book of the Law says the law is for all, and the central message of Thelema is that each individual has a unique will. It makes absolutely no sense to believe the law is for all, and then also believe on any level that Thelema is only a form of occultism. This leads to incredible expectations of others, insisting they should be doing such and such ceremonial rituals to be a true Thelemite, so to speak, when the notion of what others should or should not be doing is directly antithetical to do what thou wilt in the first place. I believe that one can be a full Thelemite, that is, one who consciously and intentionally does their will, without ever performing a single ceremonial ritual. It's absurd to me to think that of the billions of humans that have lived, that only those who yelled Hebrew words at their walls knew their wills. Viewing Thelema as a form of occultism severely limits its ability to be promulgated to the greater portion of humanity for many reasons. First of all, occultism has its own jargon, its recondite vernacular that instantly excludes people who have not already filled their walls with obscure tomes. Thelema can be explained in plain language to plain people. If you can't explain it clearly to a 10-year-old, then this simply shows that you really don't know what you're talking about to begin with. And if a 10-year-old can't understand at least the fundamentals of Thelema, what hope do we have for raising children as Thelemites? Occultists often seem to believe that something is supposedly watered down if it doesn't use obtuse occult language to explain things, when, more often than not, the reality is that the use of obtuse occult language obscures rather than clarifies anything. It may not water down, but it certainly covers up. Secondly, occultism tends towards small, exclusive groups, little fringe occult social clubs. It's not particularly conducive to establishing the law of liberty on Earth if we insist on only being part of small, tight-knit communities armored by the use of impenetrable jargon and obtuse customs. Thirdly, occultism generally comes with a great deal of superstition. Now, Crowley was the founding father of scientific illuminism, whose motto is the method of science, the aim of religion. But Crowley isn't the only occultist, nor was he totally exempt from being superstitious himself. Insofar as we import the superstitions of the various traditions of occultism, we shut ourselves off from many who do not accept such beliefs, find them without evidence, or prefer other beliefs such as scientific knowledge, and it generally makes us regress rather than progress. If ceremonial rituals aren't absolutely necessary to do one's will, what about astrology? What about divination? Or numerology? Or astral whatnot? Finally, Thelema is an all-encompassing paradigm. It is a way of life that certainly includes a form of or approach to occultism, but it extends so far beyond that to limit it to being a version of occultism severely cripples its potential. It's an unnecessary restriction, and the word of sin is restriction, as it's said. That all being said, I see great value in many forms of occultism, especially many ceremonial rituals, but I believe the extent to which we relinquish our attachment to occult trappings, our insistence on occultists being our main audience, we will see a proportionate growth in Thelema, an influx of new blood and new ideas, and the greater expansion and establishment of the law of liberty in the world.
Next question. What 3 recommendations would you make to a person seeking to become more proficient in accomplishing their true will?
For the will being such a central idea in Thelema, it remains particularly obscure and difficult to grasp for many. While each will is unique to each individual, there are some recommendations that I believe will be helpful to most people seeking to become more proficient in accomplishing their wills. That is, as long as you sincerely work with them and apply yourself earnestly to put them into effect. Although I see them as highly interconnected, these are my 3 recommendations. Number 1, the will is always accomplished in the now, so pay attention to it. Number 2, use every opportunity as a chance to learn and grow. And number 3, learn to cherish action and creation, and know that knowledge has its limits. So number 1, the will is always accomplished in the now, so pay attention to it. It's common to hear the will spoken about as if it's something to be discovered at some point in the future. I believe we are all doing our wills to a certain extent, but we could always work on ourselves, conquer and perfect ourselves, in order to more proficiently and completely accomplish that will. Regardless of that, all we ever have to work with is the present moment, so we should utilize it to the best of our abilities. The fact that will is always accomplished to some extent in the now means that we don't particularly need to worry if we haven't attained knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, or crossed the abyss, or whatever else. Whatever we have now, wherever we are, that is the time to bring our will into manifestation. What is needed, I believe, is the cultivation of a sense of being, with a capital B, a real felt sense of engagement in each moment. In other words, we need to cultivate presence. There are many things that distract us from the present moment. Most importantly, our thoughts. Our thoughts about the past, our thoughts about the future, they're still not being present in the moment. Really, the past and the future can only be helpful to us insofar as they aid us in accomplishing our will in the moment anyway. There are many, many other types of thoughts, all of which have a tendency to pull us away from being present. The practice of mindfulness, the non-attached, non-judgmental awareness in the here and now, is crucial in developing the capacity to remain in the moment, to notice thoughts as they arise rather than get caught up in them, and to return awareness to the present. Mindfulness can be practiced virtually any time. More formally, one can sit for a short period, even 10 minutes is helpful, and focus on the sensation of breathing in and out, noting when thoughts arise, and repeatedly returning the focus of attention back to the breath. Mindfulness can be cultivated at any point in the day, though. What is needed is to be fully immersed in the task at hand, to be, in language commonly used by Crowley, one-pointed in our endeavors. If you are walking, focus on the sensation of walking, noting when thoughts arise and bringing the attention back repeatedly to walking. If you are eating, just eat. If you are talking, just talk. If you are having sex, just have sex. Whatever it is we are doing, mindfulness is a skill that is built through repeated practice, and it's simply a name for the capacity to be present, to recognize thoughts that distract us from our sense of being here and now, and therefore to be fully engaged with the experience of the moment. In doing this, I believe we strip away many layers of distraction and delusion that we often bring to the table when discussing or trying to accomplish our wills. Naturally, we begin to learn to not be swayed by thought. We learn to become one-pointed. We learn to truly appreciate what is occurring in each moment. We learn non-attachment to the past and the future, as well as our thoughts about them. And we also ultimately learn to realize that our sense of being, with a capital B, is always present, so long as we cultivate the capacity to be with it. Number 2, use every opportunity as a chance to learn and grow. Our lives are full of messages and lessons for those with eyes to see and those with ears to hear. Every single day offers new opportunities to learn more about ourselves and how to live in the world. What is most important to pay attention to are the instances of conflict, discomfort, suffering, negativity, etc. as we go about our lives. These, in many ways, are signals for us that there's something to be worked on, a space for improvement and growth, especially so if the conflict or suffering is recurring. Are you frustrated every time you can't finish a task? Perhaps it's a lesson to bring extra awareness to being delivered from the lust of result, to be non-attached to timelines and expectations of completion. Are you angry every time your boss corrects you? Perhaps it's a lesson to bring extra awareness to remaining calm and cultivating patience. Do you always get in arguments with your significant other over petty disagreements? Perhaps it's a lesson to bring extra awareness to focusing on what's really important and forgiving minor trespasses. In particular, all of our relationships with others are ripe ground for growth. They are like gymnasiums where we beef up our love under will muscles. Our interactions with others are like microcosms of our general state of being. They reveal our hot buttons and our triggers. They demonstrate our capacities and our incapacities. They show our level of acceptance of others. They unveil our many expectations that we place upon others. If one can bring a little bit of extra awareness to one's relationships, becoming curious about the way in which you act with and react to others, there are always plenty of lessons to be learned, and they never stop coming. Learn to expect failure, pain, conflict, and the like, and always use it as a way to learn, as a signal there is further growth possible. The only real failure is to see a failing as discouragement, as the final say, rather than as a way to learn and fail a little bit better next time. In the eon of the child, we know that we are continually growing, and we will continue in our dynamic quest of self-knowledge and self-expansion until death sets the final seal upon our lives. Number 3, learn to cherish action and creation, and know that knowledge has its limits. Knowledge is obviously important. It's good to know that green means go and red means stop, that wood floats on water and rocks sink. We couldn't navigate the world without some level of knowledge. That being said, knowledge can be made into a demon if it's held up as the highest good, whether consciously or unconsciously. Knowledge becomes a demon when it becomes the goal itself, rather than as an aid to our action in the world, to our going. For example, if we study the Kabbalah deeply and can list all the correspondences of everything, this does not mean that we are any more intelligent, aware, or active, nor does it mean we are any closer to doing our wills more fully. All too often, we believe on some level that the accumulation of more knowledge, more facts, and more trivia will somehow do us well, when it all too often merely gives the illusion of making some kind of progress. Knowing all about meditation doesn't mean you're any good at it. Intellectually knowing the importance of having control over emotions doesn't mean you've put in the work to obtain that control. As is sometimes said, the first word in do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, is do. Action is when something is actually done, and it's ideally done out of our own volition. Reaction sets the impetus for our action outside of ourselves. It takes our center away if we are reactive. Consider how, for example, reacting when we become upset at something someone has said essentially gives all of our power to that other person. Their words have caused us to act in such and such way, rather than our action coming from ourselves. Action means we are acting out of the center in ourselves. We are reasserting ourselves as the creative causal principle in our own universe. It does us well in general to put things into effect, rather than endlessly think about them or discuss them. Argue not, talk not over much, as it is said. Rather than reading another book on meditation, perhaps actually meditate for 1/10 of the time it would take you to read it. Rather than arguing about what should be done for your local organization, perhaps actually attempt to implement something and experiment. In particular, I believe the act of creation is especially important. The act of creation is sacred. In creating, we access our Godhead, our own creative power within us that links us to the creative power of the universe. Whether it's the creation of art, music, poetry, literature, or even creations like building organizations or giving life to another human being. All of these things are expressions of the creative power, the solar phallic potency at the core of every star. Each creation is a microcosm of the will, bringing it into manifestation, a new child of inner and outer. There's something inherently satisfying, inherently fulfilling about creating that I believe each of us knows in our own small ways from our own experience. Knowledge, fact accumulating, and arguments all too often lead to division and stagnation of the will. We find ourselves feeling constricted, forced into a claustrophobic corner of our being. Yet in acting, in doing, especially in creating, we expand, we progress, we breathe in fresh air, and we give others fresh air to breathe. If we bring our attention to the now and cultivate presence, if we use every opportunity as a chance for learning and growth, and if we focus on doing and creating rather than knowing and arguing, I believe we would all become a little bit more proficient in accomplishing our wills.
Thanks to Frater IAO131 for participating in Perspectives on Thelema. Tune in to future Speech in the Silence programs to hear more, and if you would like to participate, write to us at thelemapodcast@gmail.com.